Hey everyone, welcome to North Point Online. I'm so glad you've joined us today. This is Julie.
And that's Danny, and we will be your online hosts for today. And Danny, this is kind of a big week. Everybody has either started school or is about to go back to school this week. How are you and your kids feeling about all that?
Yeah, this has definitely felt like the longest spring break ever. We're all really excited to see some different faces and to have something new to do in general. And I'm not really sure if we remember how to do a routine or not, but I'm hoping it'll come back to us.
Yes, hopefully. I hope. Our family is kind of in the same boat. We are way out of the whole wake up early, get dressed, get through school, get to work, that whole routine. And if I'm being honest, I feel like I am dragging all of us back into that kicking and screaming, myself included.
Yes, usually it is us that's doing more of the kicking and screaming.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of back to school, we actually had some really exciting back to school things happen around North Point this past week.
Yes, we did. Upstreet volunteers had a chance to welcome in our brand new kindergartners at our Kinder Kickoff drive-thru event last week. The kids took home a fun gift pack with an Upstreet t-shirt and lots of other goodies. Then this past Sunday, we hosted our third Upstreet drive-thru for all of our elementary kids. It was out of control awesome. The kids were able to drive through the different stations where they took home so many goodies, including an Upstreet Gator, candy, prizes from Game Kid and Pixel, and to top it off, a snow cone.
Yes, and we were at that drive-through event, and let me tell you, the snow cone was super welcome on that hot day.
It was so hot.
Yes, and not only that, but our student ministries team welcomed a brand new class of 6th graders to Transit this month in their first ever drive-through Transit test drive, which was just incredible and so much fun.
Yeah, and guys, we had the awesome opportunity to host a drive-through event for Austin Angels, which is one of our nonprofit partners, and they passed out backpacks and love boxes to families with foster kids to get them ready to go back to school too.
Yes, and we also we launched meetups this week, which are small groups that are designed to connect people, that's you, around a common interest. So far this week, we have hosted groups for mountain and road biking and for serenading the seniors at a local retirement home.
I love that. So coming up, we've got everything from pickleball to knitting to Zoom sessions for parents with a licensed counselor to talk about how to help kids navigate the transition back to school during COVID-19. So visit npaustin.com/meetups to see all of the groups we have planned and to RSVP.
Yes, and today I'm excited because we're going to be talking about where we're going as a church, which includes all of our groups, plus our plans for our students and our kids, and what you can expect to see from North Point Online. We are continuing to closely monitor state and local guidelines regarding COVID, from everything from numbers to schools and everything else, and we are looking forward to meeting with you guys in person again as soon as we possibly can. But in the meantime, we'll get to hear from a whole panel of people from our leadership team, and I think it's going to be a great conversation about where we feel God has been leading us here at North Point.
And I feel like anytime there's a panel of anyone here, it's going to be great.
Yes.
We also have plans for some great content all week long, so keep an eye on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss anything.
Yes, and then next weekend, we are starting a brand new series that's all about listening to God and to other people, and I think it's going to be so helpful, so I really hope that you will join us for that.
Wow, what an action-packed, awesome week we have.
Yes, it really has been, and it will be. And, it's been so encouraging for us to see the families at North Point engaging with our student and kids ministries and with each other at our meetups because we miss you, and to be able to be for the families in our community. So thank you for giving to North Point to allow us to be able to do all of this.
I can't wait to see you guys at all the things.
All the things, so many things.
Thanks again for joining us for North Point Online. We're going to hand it off to Dom and the North Point Band. Music is one of the ways we connect to God, and this song is all about how our big God meets us, walks with us, and understands everything we're going through. Here's the band with Bigger Than I Thought.
Speak to me when the silence steals my voice. You understand me. You understand me. Come to me in the valley of unknowns. You understand me. You understand me. You understand me, God. You understand me. So I'll throw all my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I'll stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you were. I believe, but help my unbelief. You understand me. You understand me. Help me reach the faith that's underneath. You understand me. You understand me. You understand me, God. You understand me. So I'll throw all my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you were. I will rest in the Father's hands. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. I will rest in the Father's hands. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. I will rest on the Father's hands. Leave the
arguably the greatest movement in human history that has withstood empires and tyrants and governments and persecution of all kind for over 2,000 years, is the church. And what's fascinating to think about, that's what Jesus promised. In Matthew 16, Jesus said, "And the gates of hell will not prevail over this incredible truth and this incredible movement." And that's exactly what we've seen. No evil has overcome this movement. From the times of Nero, who's the emperor of Rome in the first century, where he built an entire Colosseum to persecute Christians, to stomp Christianity out, all the way to the 20th century, where more Christians have faced persecution and been martyred than all 19 centuries put together. Nothing has overcome the church exactly as Jesus promised, that the gates of hell will not prevail. And when it comes to the church, from day one, the church has never been about a building. It's never been about liturgy or traditions or rituals or pews or stained glass. No, those are all on the periphery. The church has always been about a movement of people, a gathering of people. Sometimes that's large and sometimes that's small, around one single truth, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And to punctuate that truth, he rose from the dead. And when it comes to the church, there are really only two mandates: communion and baptism. And communion is all about remembering the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And baptism is all about the idea when a person puts their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, the very next thing they do is to get baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And everything outside those two mandates, when it comes to music, when it comes to lights, when it comes to stages, when it comes to even tall hair with a lot of hairspray, everything outside of that are simply tools. They're catalysts to see this incredible message that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, goes further, faster. And guys, that is the church. And what's fascinating to think about is every generation must take up the baton of the local church, and they must steward it and be responsible. And then one day they will pass that baton to the next generation. And some generations take the baton of the local church and pass it to the next generation far better than they found it. And some generations take the baton of the local church and pass it to the next generation far worse than they received it. And that brings us to today. Because here we are, and we are holding the baton of the local church, all of us together in this generation. And as we hold this baton of the local church, there will be a day that we pass this to the next generation. And guys, here's the deal. I think the question that we must ask as we hold the baton of the local church is not, do we have enough faith? Although that's a great question. It's not, what do we fear? Although that's a great question. I think the greatest question you and I could ask as we think about leading and stewarding the local church is, what is wise? What does wisdom require of us to do? Because Solomon says when it comes to wisdom, wisdom is supreme. Sell all you have to get it. Wisdom is more valuable than rubies, than gold and silver. And so the question is, what is wise for us to do in this season as a church? What does wisdom require of us? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited to introduce you to some incredible leaders to have the discussion about what is wise for us to do in this season. And so I want to introduce you to my friend Barry Cox, Jordan Geist, and Shane Norcross. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. Well, hey, real quick, before we go any further, if you guys haven't met Barry and Jordan and Shane, I want to give you a little bit of context to what they do. So Barry, you are executive director here at North Point, and you lead all things like organizational and keep us aligned and keep us healthy. So thank you for that. Sure. And Jordan, you're our student director, which means middle school, high school students, and you are doing a great job leading our students. And you've taken a new role as our content director, which we'll talk about more today. Yep. And Mr. Norcross, Shane Norcross, you are our groups director, which means all relationships, all groups, all community. That is you, and you are leading the charge. Yep. So thank you guys for being here today. Well, real quick, before we talk about, what is wise, what does wisdom require for us as a church, I'm just curious for you guys, over the last 5 months with COVID-19, the world has changed. Our world has changed. Your world has changed. So I'm just curious, how are you guys doing and how are you processing all this?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say 5 months because, on one hand, that's a long period of time. On the other, it's really not. But for me, I don't know if you're experiencing this at home or not, like there are so many moments that are already very surreal in this process.
Yeah.
I just think back to that first Sunday of spring break. And I think that was that Friday when there was the first positive test in Austin. And so we were all slacking all day long with our leadership team. What do we do? All these people advising not to gather. And, we jump on a leadership team call that day and we're trying to plan it all out. And I remember specifically, we were like, hey, on the website, do we just say like, this is 2 weeks and then we'll be back? Like what should we actually write? And I think it was Barry that was like, I think it's going to be a little longer than 2 weeks. And we're like,
maybe
no.
3 or 4 weeks.
We'll be fine.
Yeah.
And to still be, at that point we had no idea like schools and that the fall would still be affected, that people would be starting online. So it's, definitely been a roller coaster. I think about students impacted, majorly this summer with Camp 75, and that affects our students and me personally and all that as well. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster for sure.
Yeah. And I think that word surreal is so appropriate.
Yeah.
Like it's totally fitting for what's happened.
Yeah.
How about you guys? And just, just personally, how's it been going over the last 5 months?
Yeah, well, I think from my perspective, having a large family, it's been interesting watching each one of our kids respond to the situation differently.
Yeah. Hey,
And
I'm just curious, how large is your family?
I have 6 kids.
That's right. You have more kids than me,
Thank
which
you
is
for
awesome.
reminding me.
Yeah.
But so just figuring out how to come alongside each one of them is difficult in this season. Our 3 older boys were going to be captains for Camp 75 this year, and they were super excited about the experience. This was probably the thing that they talked about the most this year. And so when Camp 75 was canceled, we had to kind of mourn the loss of that experience with them, which was kind of hard.
Right.
And then every other year, my family takes a trip to Canada to see my extended family.
Because you're our local Canadian.
That's right.
Yep.
And we get super excited about this trip, and the border's still closed, so we couldn't make that trip happen this year. And as a family, we kind of mourned the loss of that experience as well. So it's been weird because it's such a different year this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 3 teenagers and definitely been up and down, and certainly mourning Camp 75. Back in the spring, just school shutting down, all the school activities, interaction with friends. My kids have been starved for relational connectivity, and we've managed different ways throughout the season. In terms of being pretty heavily under lockdown to, how do we get some friends, around our kids, get some community going, and then, open things up a little more. And then, here we go in the fall with school, being another pivot, starting back online. And so, yeah, it's definitely been an up and down roller coaster for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too that quarantine can just be very different for people based on 5 kids,
Yes.
3 kids, 6 kids.
And how many kids do you have?
Big 0. Yeah. So as hard
You
as
have
it's
a
been to
big,
keep
fluffy
everything
dog.
straight, Mowgli gets a lot of extra time, a
Yeah.
lot of time with Emily. So, it's tough. But
I could loan you a few
yeah.
so you can experience what we are
I really
experiencing.
like our setup right now.
Yeah, Shane and I could easily, hey, can you take
For
my
sure.
kids for the next 2
I'll
weeks,
let you
Jill and I?
pick.
Not at all. You guys all have a bunch in student ministry, so all of yours.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of yours.
Yeah.
That's
so-
crazy to think about. Jordan, I think what you said is so spot on. That idea of being surreal. I have felt that too personally. I feel a little bit like we're in a movie. I've told Jill this several times. Like, man, babe, I feel like we're in this movie. But I'm telling you, over the last 5 months, for me, one of the really cool things is when it's just Jill and I and our 5 boys, because we're all at home together. There's been some really cool moments that we've experienced, and I've just paused and thought, man, this is great. But at the same time, I don't know what's going on because I do feel a little bit more irritable. And that's coming out more and more. I don't know if you guys have experienced
time
that.
to check in with the counselor.
Yeah, that could be true. So maybe it's time for that. But I think for all of us, I think you guys can relate with that we're all experiencing different things over the last 5 months. So guys, thanks for sharing that because I think that's just true. I think that's what we're going through. Well, today we are here to actually talk about not what's happened over the last 5 months, but really what is our strategy? What does wisdom require of us as we move into this new season, new school year, fall year, all that good stuff. And so, Barry, I just want to start with you. I know as a church, over the last 5 months, I've given a lot of announcements about some changes. There's a lot of those things. Jordan, you mentioned Camp 75 and the changes that have happened with that. And then I know one of the discussions we've had as a leadership team behind the scenes is, to go back in person to in-person services. One of the challenges with that is that churches that are going back to in-person services, they're seeing anywhere from 10 to 20, at the most, like 30% of their church show up, which then means there's 70, 80, 90% of people who are still engaging online, which then puts us in this really weird position because it's like, this whole kind of church online, if you will, and then this in-person church, and it's like we have to be two churches. So that's been a really interesting dynamic, lots of discussion around there.
Big tension.
Yeah.
How to do both well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so as we think about this new school year, as we think about what does, wisdom require of us moving into this new season, can you talk a little bit about where we're going?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I'll start with, yes, there's a new strategy and really excited to roll that out here. But first I want to start and say, like, our vision and mission haven't changed, and our hearts haven't changed. We are still for this community. We still feel a deep responsibility to love and lead well, and so a lot of the conversations have been centered around that. Like, how do we continue forward with this vision and mission in this season? Our hearts are still here. Our passion is still here. How do we continue to do the things that we want to do as a church? But I think we also have to recognize that things have completely changed.
Right.
Not just for the church, I mean, obviously in the world, and for a lot of people very specifically have been impacted. But for the church, it sort of feels like we've got both our hands tied behind our back. The tools, the resources that we would usually use to lead, we can't. They're not
Right.
available. It's not prudent to meet, or we can't engage in the same way. And so we've really had to look at, what are we going to do? Are we just going to quit? Are we
Right.
going to just sit on our hands and wait for things to return to normal, or what are we going to do? And no way we're going to quit. Like I said,
Right.
our heart, our passion is still for the things that we were doing 6 months ago, a year ago. Those things haven't changed, and so we've really kind of hunkered in and said, well, we've got to innovate. We do have things available to us. We do have resources and tools available to us. How can we take what is available and just do some things differently?
Yeah.
And so we've put together a little bit of a new strategy, and it's got two parts: a big content part, and we're going to get into the pieces of that, and then a big community part. On the content side, we recognize that we have to be able to engage with people digitally, where they're at, how they're already digitally online. We can't just forklift the Sunday morning church service they were experiencing in person, record it and put it online.
Right.
It just doesn't get the same engagement.
Totally different experience.
Totally different experience.
Yeah.
But we recognize that, we've got to continue to produce content to engage people. We've got to lead, we've got to teach, we've got to encourage, we've got to support. So we need to use those native digital platforms to continue to do that with content.
Right.
And we've got a kind of a three-part strategy there with our content side, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. Some of those things you've already seen, the dialogues on Sunday morning. We've started to produce some extra online content, and we're going to talk specifically about how those pieces fit together. So that's the content side. But we also recognize that we don't want to just create a church of consumers, right? It's not just, hey, we're going to fill you with content,
Right.
plug you with knowledge, puff you up and send you on your way, right? We all need community, and community's been a part of North Point's DNA since the
From day
beginning.
one.
Yeah, since day one. And so, but we also recognize we need to innovate on the community side as well. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
those things are impacted. The tools we would normally use, gathering students in large gatherings, and small groups are impacted, and all those things. And so we've got to innovate there as well. And so we've got some really cool plans, some things that allow you to kind of casually interact around common interest, or to be able to go deeper in CGs. We're just, our community groups. We're just, changing, some of our approach there. So anyway, we really feel like these two things together in this season is, the best way that we can love and lead well.
Yeah.
And I'll just add on, one of the things I'm most excited about is that we're actually employing the strategy across the entire church.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool things happening with kids and student ministry, innovating, trying new things, finding new ways to engage the next generation that I think are just going to be fantastic.
Right. And I love the posture of our church that we're willing to do that. It's not like, hey, we're just going to keep doing what we've always been doing. I mean, I think one of the mandates of the church, and what we learned through church history, is the church has to be fluid.
Absolutely.
And says, hey, the two mandates, baptism and communion, and it's around one single message: Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Like, how can we go do that? And with all the digital platforms, all the media platforms kind of, that we're looking at, I love that we're willing to kind of be nimble and go, how do we love and lead best.
Absolutely.
So, one of the things I love that you said is our hearts are as passionate as ever about our vision and mission. We're, I think today, more passionate about our vision and mission to, create a church that unchurched people love to engage in our mission of inspiring and leading people in a growing relationship with Jesus Christ than ever before. So I really love our new approach that we're taking. So I know one of the things you mentioned is content, and content is really, really important. And as we're thinking about content, we've broken that up into 3 kind of big categories, if you will. We've got 4 talks, we've got the Sunday conversation, and then we have overtime. And so Jordan, you've taken on a new role as our content director. And so you're wearing a whole lot of hats right now. And but it's exciting because we get to work a little bit more closely together, lots of collaboration around content. And so before we jump into those 3 parts and you kind of explain what all those mean, because those are new terms, what's the goal? Like if I was just, I am sitting down with you. So if I was just going like, hey, what's the goal? What's the win when it comes to content?
Yeah, I mean, I think to start the content conversation, I would reiterate a little bit of what you said up front, that idea that the church has never been just one day a week, specifically 1 hour a week, and we've been saying that way before this season ever started, but there are legitimately tools available to us today that the church has never had before. And I don't want to be dramatic and our generation is special, but there are really some amazing things available to us. It's never been the church can be in your pocket, in your car, in your headphones, working out, cleaning, TV, iPad, whatever it is, through your Alexa or Siri. I mean, it really is unbelievable the opportunity that we have to connect now. And ultimately, our win with all that content is to create helpful content that resonates, meaning you know what to do with it. You can apply it in your life, and it resonates. It meets you where you're at currently in your journey. And this is a really big deal because content is the starting point. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is the starting point. Paul says in Romans 12 to be transformed, to change by the renewing of your mind. Like it starts with your perspective. So, if you're going to do anything different in any area of life or in faith, it means you have to kind of trip over the truth. You have to have a type of insight that's like, wow, I've never thought that way before. And it leads me to do something different. Like you mentioned at the beginning, Proverbs says, do whatever it costs, whatever it takes to get wisdom. It's the starting point. And at the same time, he also warns us in 1 Corinthians, he says, hey, knowledge can also puff up. So if that's all we're focused on and we think we check the box or we feel smart or good about ourselves, then we get into that really dangerous place of being a consumer Christian to say, what can my church do for me? And that's a dangerous place to be in as well. So,
and I think one thing on that's a little bit interesting is oftentimes when we get information, it's exciting. Like when there's a new idea, new wisdom, like we feel really good, which we should, and go, wow, that's how we're going to do it, or I've got a deeper understanding. But ultimately, that's just information, and it hasn't changed our lives. And we can get in that trap and just go more information, and we can believe we've actually changed, but really no changes happen.
Which is exactly why I am so excited about all these new ways to connect and provide content, because I think what's going to go up in this season is application. In the past, you hear something helpful from you on a Sunday, and we're like, man, I really intend to do something different in my life. Like, I want to do what he said. But then life happens and I get busy and distracted, and I don't think about it till whenever the next time is that I show up at North Point, right? But now there's, this reminder on Monday, and then we go further into the conversation on Tuesday, and here's how to apply it on Wednesday. And I'm watching it or I'm listening to it in the actual places where I can do something about it. I can call somebody, I can set up a counseling appointment, I can change my finance, whatever it is, I can actually do something about it. So
I love that.
Ultimately, we've been saying for a long time that I do, like, we all believe Jesus makes life better and he makes you better at life. I mean, whether life is good or bad for you right now, it's just better with Jesus in it. And so there are so many ways that we have available now to keep pointing people to him, which is really exciting.
Well, I'm so excited about that. Like, I think, to think about church just not being on Sunday, but all throughout the week, and to think about all the different ways we can deliver content. So I know we've broken it up into 3 big categories, and these are new terms. And so I'd love you just to kind of walk us through that. And so this first idea is 4 talks. So, I mean, that's like new. What does that mean? What is that about?
I'm so excited about this. I mean, the whole concept of four, our vision with that is we've been saying for a couple of years now that for too long, the church has been known for what it's against. We want to be known for what we're for.
Absolutely.
And granted, we're for a lot of things, but to kind of simplify it, we are for people because God is for people. And so, we're for you, we're for the next generation, we're for Austin, our community. And what we're for when it comes to people is we're for people growing, belonging, and finding purpose.
Right.
Growing as people, growing in your faith, growing as husbands and wives and parents and professionals. We're for people belonging, realizing, hey, you are not meant to go in this journey alone. So to find your tribe, to find your group, your people here, know that you can connect here. And then finding purpose, how do I connect my story to a bigger story? How am I a part of something significant in this chaos and craziness of life? So we just really want to be helpful with that. We want to be helpful and additive to the conversation wherever you are at in the journey. And that's the heart behind Four Talks. And it's really rethinking the way that we approach content. It's more of an on-demand style, if you will. It's almost kind of like Netflix, if you would.
Sure.
You can sit there and surf all kinds of different genres and shows and movies. And the example that I would give that we were kind of talking about offline is, we might be going through a serving series and that's great, but maybe you just had a new kid and you're like, I'm pro serving. I think it's wonderful. I'd love to, but all I literally have time to do is keep this new human alive. Right? That's all I can think about.
Yes.
But I'll absorb anything you've got on parenting. Like I'm attentive. That's the season in. That's what I want. Well, as we build this library out, you would have the opportunity to engage with that. And so we're going to roll out a bunch of these actually just this week.
Yeah.
And they're short, they're 5-minute videos. A couple big, topics that we're starting with is, leadership, relationships, faith, personal health. And then we're just going to be adding to these a couple a week. The library is going to continue to grow and grow and grow.
Right.
We want to, hear from you guys and what your feedback is and what kind of Four Talks you'd want to hear about, but super shareable, super relevant. And I'm really excited about, the opportunities there.
Yeah. And what's really cool about that, the Four Talks, some of those are specific for followers of Jesus Christ, but the majority of Four Talks are going to be, if you're a Christian or not a Christian, it's just going to be helpful and relevant to where we're at in life. So I love that. So that's Four Talks, but then we have the Sunday conversation.
Yeah.
And so if you guys have tuned in over the last several weeks, you've seen a little bit of a change with Sunday's conversation. But anything that you would add to that or anything that you would give context to?
Yeah, I think what's important to keep in mind with that is that the Sunday series are going to continue to be the cornerstone of what we do because they're going to provide momentum, direction, unity for our church as a whole. And so those are going to continue to be important. But we are continuing to experiment. And so I think it's good for people to keep that in mind as well. Like we're going to be changing things from time to time. We're going to have these dialogues. It's going to be a monologue sometimes. It might be in different locations because we're ultimately trying to figure out, gosh, we have so many opportunities when we're not designing for a room, but we're designing digitally and online. What is it that we can do with that? So we're going to be adding voices, adding perspectives, and I think they're going to continue to get more and more dynamic.
That's awesome. And what about music? Music is a big part of
Great
in-room.
Yes.
But then, in terms of, hey, now I'm in my living room or I'm on my phone, what are we thinking there?
Yeah, well, we've definitely learned that music in a room is not the same as online, but that doesn't mean it's going to go away. So it's going to continue to be a part of the Sunday experience intentionally. Yeah. And we're going to continue to think through ways, well, what does it look like to consume music digitally? Because it does impact us differently emotionally and spiritually, et cetera. So, it'll be a part of Sundays. We've done things already like, Taylor and Jamie live on a Thursday.
Right.
Thinking about, North Point singles that are on, Apple Music and Spotify. So I can listen in my car and have those kind of moments and connect. So there's a lot of opportunities where music will continue to expand too.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's exciting to think about.
Yep.
So we have Four Talks,
Yep.
we have our Sunday conversation, and then the last part of the content is overtime.
Absolutely.
And what's really cool, again, if you've tuned in over the last several weeks, you've heard us reference, hey, tune in on the overtime Monday or Tuesday. And so can you talk about that and just give it, just an explanation and context?
Yeah, so whereas Four Talks are not inherently connected to Sunday in any way, they can kind of stand alone. Overtime is going to supplement whatever it is that we're going through in our Sunday conversations. And what's awesome about that is, and you know this if you've probably given any kind of presentation before, but, Buck and I, regularly communicating, we always kind of even right off the bat sometimes cut hours of things that we wish we could add to
talk
the
for like
conversation.
5 hours.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yes.
People may not believe that. But
We can put them to sleep so easily.
Oh yeah, you guys think we go long now? We could go way longer.
Yeah.
So, but with this, avenue, now we have opportunities to have some of those side conversations and build on extra points throughout the
Right.
week. So, I think about early on in this Fresh Start series, you answered a huge question in an overtime video about why do bad things happen to good people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that would have been a huge sidebar on a Sunday and added a bunch of time, but you could do that concisely, speaking right to it, in that a couple of minute video in overtime, and that was
Right.
awesome and so helpful. We've seen the extreme ownership video from Jeremy that's just super practical, or these podcast conversations where we got to hear the Ferguson story, and Wes added to this week. So
Right.
lots
Yeah.
of those opportunities and avenues to hear more voices, and also to see now, how do I apply this after the conversation got started on Sunday?
Yeah. Well, I love that. Well, thank you for leading content. I know it's fun, all the conversations we get to have and thinking about it. And just what's really cool is the scalability of this new approach and this new strategy to think about. It's not only on Sunday, but it's throughout the week, and it can scale, here in Austin, outside of Austin. It's just a really cool thing to think about.
It's one of the things I'm personally really excited about as we think about the scalability of this, as this takes off, as we build out this resource library of Ford Talks, as we get even better at delivering this overtime content, the scalability. Even once we're meeting together again,
Right.
to be able to reach more people, to be able to connect with more people around Austin. Yeah, I mean, it potentially moves us from how do we, build many churches to try to connect with people, to maybe we can build a few central core churches and then continue to build and connect with people,
Right.
digitally. Really exciting potential.
Yeah, it's so cool to think about. So, Jordan, I know one of the things you said early, you just said content is a big part of how we change and how we grow and define, purpose or discover purpose and meaning. But there's got to be something more. And otherwise, it just kind of puffs us up, as Paul talks about in the scriptures. So that's where community comes in, the connection piece, the relational piece, and that is you, Shane.
Yeah.
And so, Shane, you're being our groups director, thinking about our community side of things. You and I have talked about this, and then just in the context of what community is, we've talked about it in kind of three big categories as well. Thinking about meetup groups, thinking about community groups, and then thinking about next level groups.
Yeah.
So again, all those are new terms. This is a new kind of thing. So I'd love you just to kind of walk us through that and start with meetup groups.
For sure. First of all, I'm super excited about the varying options of content that North Point is going to be releasing to people, content that's designed to meet them right where they're at. And I love that you and Jordan both talked about how knowledge can puff us up. And if we just focus on knowledge, it can make us arrogant. And we can feel pretty good about ourselves. But honestly, has anything actually changed? I mean, has our love for God and for people grown? And I think there's a key ingredient that will fuel our growth, that will help people find belonging and discover purpose, and that's community. And I love what Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes, where he talks about how two are better than one because they have a good return for their work. I mean, if one falls down, the other can help him up. But pity the man that has no one to help him up. And we don't know what this fall is going to look like.
Right.
But one thing we do know is that people need community. And another thing we know is that community isn't one size fits all. And so we want to offer a varying options of community that will meet people right where they're at. And you mentioned meetups. And meetups are just a place where people can connect around a shared interest. I mean, we've got things that people can do together as simple as mountain biking or going for a run or playing pickleball.
Pickleball?
Yeah, I really don't know what it
What is
is.
pickleball?
But it sounds exciting. Yeah. We've even got a meetup Zoom call scheduled with a licensed counselor for parents to have a safe conversation around the challenges they are facing in the world today. I mean, we even have a meetup for people that want to knit and crochet together. And
I know somebody on the stage is actually a knitter and a crocheter.
Yeah, Barry's got a pretty mean
Barry, is that you?
cross stitch.
Cross stitching?
Double crochet.
Oh, a double crochet.
That's the only thing I got. I can make a really long chain of double crochet. That's about it.
Wow,
Wow.
that's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So meetup groups around all kinds of different things. And if you're into pickleball or crocheting, get in a group with Barry there. But I love that because that's just like everyday life. That's what we're doing, and to be able to form connections and communities and relationships just around everyday life. I love that. It's kind of an entry point, if you will.
Yeah.
So then we have community groups, and if you've been part of North Point for a while, we've talked about community groups. But talk about that today. Is anything changed with community groups? What kind of community groups, and what does that? Give us some context to that.
Yeah, well, I love community groups, and they are still focused on creating an environment where people are encouraged to pursue authentic community and spiritual growth.
Right.
But in the past, we have encouraged people to make a commitment to join a group for 1 to 2 years. But when we don't know what the world is going to look like in 6 weeks,
right,
it's not realistic to ask people to commit to a group that's going to last for 1 year to 2 years. And so we are making our community groups like short-term groups where people can connect for 7 to 8 weeks around a specific topic. And we're still going to have groups for men, for women, and for couples, but we're also going to offer groups for things like grief support. We're going to offer parenting groups and other topical-based groups that will meet people right where they're at today.
So that's helpful context when it comes to community groups. So in terms of community, we've got our meetup groups, we've got community groups, and then this whole new concept of next level groups. So can you kind of walk us through what a next level group is?
For sure. I'm really excited about these next level groups. They also focus on creating an environment where people are encouraged to pursue authentic community and spiritual growth, but they're going to prioritize the growth aspect. These are groups that are intentionally designed to help people not only grow in their faith, but things like their leadership as well. And these groups come with a little bit more intentionality, which may require people to give a little more commitment and work to them. But in return, I think it's the kind of experience that's going to help people take their faith and their leadership to the next level.
Well, Shane, that is really helpful to get context to that. And as you were talking, it really made me think about church history and just thinking about all the seasons the church has been through. And, there have been seasons where the church has gathered together in large gatherings. I mean, hundreds and thousands of people gathered together. And there have been other seasons in the church where, because of outside sources, maybe persecution or whatever it is, that the church is decentralized and met in much smaller groups. And that's kind of the season we're in. And what's really cool about that, when you study church history, I mean, when the church is decentralized and meeting in these smaller groups, there's a higher level of accountability, there's a higher level of relational connectivity and intimacy, and the church seems to be even that much more effective. And so that's the season we're in, and I'm really excited about our groups coming up.
For sure.
So I've got a question for you, Shane, and for you, Jordan. So when it comes to content and it comes to connecting and community, how do we go about doing that? Like, what's the best way to tune into content and get involved in a group?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, super practically, on the content side, the social platforms that we're going to be on are Instagram and Facebook. And so if you don't have either of those, find a teenager that will help you, set one up for sure. And then YouTube is where a lot of these things are going to live as well. We've got playlists for them. Kind of the all-in-one will be the website. So it's really whatever your rhythm or pattern is going to be there. But we actually have some overtime videos coming out this week, if I can plug overtime, to say, be on the lookout for some guides in terms of how to both connect with our content and find meetups and groups, etc.
I would say it's a good opportunity if you haven't, if you're not following us on those social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, go in, follow us. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, now's the time to do it. Yeah. And just to get notified as that content comes out, because there's all kinds of great stuff coming out throughout the week, and that way you can stay in the loop on it.
It's the easiest way to not miss anything. Totally.
Yeah. And when it comes to community, we would actually be launching our group season right now if this was a normal year.
Right.
But it's not.
Yeah.
And we really want to give parents time to see how school goes for their kids before we even consider asking them to take a step into a community group. And so we're postponing our group launch until mid-September. And if people want a reminder of when group season starts, they can just go to our group site at npaustin.com/groups, and they can sign up for a reminder there. But the neat thing is they can sign up for a meetup today, and they can find all of our meetups on our meetup page at npaustin.com/meetups. And if they can't find a meetup that is interesting to them, or they're looking for a specific activity, we'd love for them to host their own. And there's ways that they can do that on that site as well.
That's cool. So if I'm into golf and I want to start a meetup group for golf, I can
For
do
sure.
that.
That would
Absolutely.
be wonderful.
And we want those
Giddy up.
ideas. I mean, we really desire that meetups are organic. They meet people where they're at. They're things that people are interested in. We've talked internally. If you have a friend and you're into XYZ, let's set up a meetup, because chances are there's somebody at North Point that would love to come hang out with you and participate.
Right.
Yep.
Well, guys, thanks so much. That's really helpful when it comes to content, when it comes to community, and how to take that next step. Well, listen, as we wrap up today, I want you to think about something. Specifically when it comes to church, over the last 5 months, perhaps there's been some habits that we've gotten out of. And if we're honest, we've actually replaced those good habits with some not so good habits. So as we think about this new strategy, as we think about this new season, as we think about a new school year, I want to invite you into 4 habits. And the first one is this, is to establish a Sunday routine. And here's what I mean by that. It's simply to pick a time on Sunday. Maybe if you're an early riser, that's at 8 a.m. or maybe at 10 a.m. Or if you're an afternoon person, maybe that's at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And to pick a time and then to sit down as an individual, maybe as a couple, maybe as a family, and engage with the Sunday conversation and ask questions and dialogue about it. And simply to establish that routine is going to be incredibly, incredibly helpful. So that's the first thing. The second habit I want to invite you into is to establish a small group routine. And if there was ever a time for us to engage in community, if there was ever a time for us to engage relationally, especially with what's happened over the last 5 months, it's right now. And so a great next step to do that is to go to npaustin.com/groups, and you can look at the meetup groups, you can look at all the different groups we have, and to begin to establish a routine of being involved in community, being involved in a small group. The third habit I want to invite you into is to make sure that you keep your kids connected. Because this new season, we've got great things for Wambaland and Upstreet that are brand new. We've got some drive-thrus that are happening for our kiddos. We've got boxes that'll help them engage with the Sunday content. It's a great, great time to keep them engaged. And not only with elementary and preschool age kids, but also with Transit and Inside Out. That's our middle school and high school kids. We've got awesome new content. We've got awesome new small groups that we're kicking off. And if there was ever a time to keep our kids engaged, it's right now. And here's the deal. I want to give you permission to actually bribe your kids. So if your kids are young, maybe bribe them, say, hey, engaging with church, we'll give you some Lucky Charms or, maybe a Snickers bar, maybe just sugar them up or something like that. And if they're older, maybe you got to pay them to get engaged. But this is the time to keep them connected, because here's what I know is going to happen. As our kids connect, they're going to grow. They're going to engage. There's going to be some Sundays they're going to absolutely love. And I also know that they're going to engage, and there are going to be some times that they're not going to like it. And the reason why they're not going to like it is because they're kids, and that's what kids do. So I want to invite you to keep your kids connected. The last habit I want to invite you into is to continue to support North Point, and really on 2 fronts. First and foremost is to continue to pray for our church. Because guys, this is not my church. This is our church together. And I want you to pray because we need wisdom like never before. This is a new season. This is such a unique time in the history of our church. And so continue to pray for us. And then secondly, I want to invite you to continue to support us financially, investing in our vision and mission. Because there's no secret about it. There's no outside organization supporting us. It's us coming together and investing financially in our vision and our mission. And when we do that together, it allows us to do what we're doing today. It allows us to provide this content, to provide overtime content, to provide 4 talks, to provide the Sunday conversation. And then it also allows us to establish these incredible groups, meetup groups, groups all around our city, groups that are easy to get engaged with. And then it allows us to serve and to love people in our community, people throughout our city, people throughout our neighborhood, and people throughout the world who are hurting and need the church to come alongside them. That's what your financial investment does. So as we move into this new season, I want us to invite you into these 4 new habits: to establish a Sunday routine, to establish a small group routine, to keep your kids connected, and to continue to support North Point. And guys, if we can do this together, here's what I would imagine. I think one day, maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to look back to this moment and we're going to be incredibly proud because we listened to the voice of wisdom and we were able to take the baton that's handed to us in this generation and hand it to the next generation far better than we received it. So that's what I want you to think about. Well, guys, again, thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation, and I would just love to pray for our time. Father, thank you so much for your love for us, for your grace. And God, thank you for allowing this wisdom to be provided, that you are a God of wisdom. And God, as we think about this new season, as we think about these new habits, what I know is that we just need you. And so I just pray that you lead all of us to take a step, to trust you, to get involved in community, to get involved in the content, and just to stay faithful. Father, we love you. Thank you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen.